Let me tell you something right off the bat. There was a time not that long ago when I was the kind of guy who could text, "Want to hit the bar?" and five dudes would drop everything, including their girlfriends, to show up in 10. I had a group chat that lit up like a Christmas tree 24/7. People laughed louder at my jokes than they actually were funny, which is saying a lot, because I'm hilarious. I was King Ronnie, the mayor of good times, the sultan of shots, the life of every party. And then, absolutely everyone ghosted me. Poof, gone. Vanished like my motivation on Monday mornings. You ever seen a group chat go from, "Brew we riding tonight?" to crickets? I mean, literal crickets. I thought my phone was broken. I even restarted it. Twice. But let me rewind a bit. This epic nosedive didn't happen overnight. This was a slow burn, like one of those fancy candles that smells like cinnamon and betrayal. See, the downfall started when I got promoted. Yeah, promoted. At work. I know, right? Not fired. Not arrested. Not caught doing something sketchy behind a Taco Bell. Promoted. Apparently, that was my first offense. I was working in marketing at this mid-tier ad agency that thought it was Google because we had beanbags and an office dog named Pretzel. I wasn't trying to be that guy, the one who suddenly starts wearing loafers and talking about KPIs at brunch. But I worked hard, landed a big client, and boom, they made me head of strategy. Suddenly, I wasn't Ronnie from the memes anymore. I was Ronnie the boss. And you'd think that'd be cool, right? That your friends would high-five you, maybe buy you a congratulatory beer, or even just a fist bump. Nope. Apparently, success makes you suspicious. I noticed it first with Jared, my roommate/lifetime bro, the kind of dude who could recite every line from Superbad and once Venmo'd me $7 for emotional damage after I beat him at Mario Kart. Jared started acting weird. He'd miss my calls, or say stuff like, "Bro, you're probably too busy with your work people now." My work people? What does that even mean? I don't have people. I had Pretzel the office dog and a free kombucha fridge. Let me tell you something weird about rock bottom. You get used to it. I mean, at first, you're like, this is terrible. Why does my couch feel colder when no one's texting me? But after a while, it's kind of peaceful. Like camping, but with indoor plumbing and way more snacks. So there I was, newly ghosted, freshly promoted, and fully marinated in my own solitude. You'd think I'd be spiraling, binging sad indie films, and writing haikus about betrayal. But instead, something shifted. And it all started with stretchy pants. So, one morning I woke up, stared at my closet, and realized I hated all my clothes. Every single thing screamed, "Frat bro who thinks Axe body spray is a personality." It was like my wardrobe was personally offended that I'd turned 30. So, I said screw it, and went online shopping. I typed in comfortable pants that don't make me look like I gave up on life, and the internet delivered. Athleisure. I bought one pair. Gray. Tapered. Cloud-like. I slipped them on and heard angels sing. I wore them to the grocery store. To improv class. I was reborn. Every step I took in those pants was a step away from the Ronnie who needed constant approval. Stretchy pants taught me that comfort cool. And once that clicked, everything else started clicking too. Let me just say, I did not expect to enjoy improv. I thought it would be all jazz hands and weirdos pretending to be talking giraffes. Okay, that part does happen. But it turned out to be the most freeing thing I'd done in years. At first, I was awkward as hell. My first scene, I was supposed to be a detective. I panicked and yelled, "I am the law," in a Batman voice and then pretended to faint. I still wake up sweating over that. But nobody judged me. In fact, they laughed. Not at me. In that real warm, we've all been their way. These strangers didn't care about my job title or the fact that all my friends had ghosted me. They cared if I was present, if I was listening, if I said yes, and I started going every week. It became my new crew. There was Becky, a nurse with the driest wit known to man. Reggie, a gym teacher who played all his characters like they were from The Godfather. And Juno, who could turn any scene into a soap opera, even if it started with "You're holding my sandwich wrong." We weren't cool, but we were real. At the same time, I started cooking. Not because I suddenly had a passion for cuisine, but because I had to stop ordering Thai food 6 nights a week like a sad sitcom character. My first attempt, spaghetti, burned the sauce, forgot to salt the water, dropped a noodle on my foot, and screamed like it was lava. By week 2, I was doing better. I could make chili, a decent stir-fry. I even tried salmon once, which came out. Let's just say the fire department and I are now on a first-name basis. But it felt good. There was something about making a meal, just for me, that made me feel like a grown-up. A sad, single, slightly oversalted grown-up, but still. The weirdest part of all this? I got productive. Like, really productive. Turns out, when you're not spending 4 nights a week at bars pretending you care about sports stats and craft beer notes, you have a lot of time. So I started helping a small business with their social media. Then another one. Word got around. Suddenly, I had a real side hustle. By month 3, I'd built a website. Bought a ring light, don't judge me. Took client calls in a button-down shirt and boxers, like a true Zoom warrior. And people paid me, real money, to do stuff I actually liked. One lady even called me a branding genius. I cried, not like full-on sobbing, but there was definitely one noble tear, like that Native American in the old littering ad. And just when I thought I was finally over the ghosting, bam, there it was. A DM from Rachel. Remember her? Queen of the friend group. Social butterfly. Once told me I was a little too intense about hummus. It read, "Hey Ronnie, so your post about the new business. So awesome. I've been thinking about launching something too. Maybe you can give me some tips?" Smiley face. I stared at it. Not in anger. Not in sadness. Just curiosity. Because suddenly, all the people who disappeared when I stopped being their party clown, they were creeping back in. Slowly. Casually. Like I wouldn't notice. But here's the twist. I didn't care. I wasn't mad. I wasn't planning revenge or composing some spicy subtweet. I had my stretchy pants, my chili, my improv crew, my own little business. And for the first time in forever, I didn't need anyone to validate me. I like myself, which, if you told me a few months ago, would have sounded like something a motivational mug would say. But here I was, living it. I was doing great. I had found peace. Improv twice a week, home-cooked meals, stretchy pants that hugged my soul, and a client list that paid better than my old job ever did. And then, like life always does just when you're getting comfortable, I got invited to a wedding. Not just any wedding. Jared's. Yeah, Jared, my ex-roommate, my brother from another mother. The guy who once split a rotisserie chicken with me at 2 a.m. while we watched conspiracy theory documentaries. The same Jared who ghosted me like I was a subscription he forgot to cancel. It came in the mail, like a paper slap in the face. Jared and Kayla, tie the knot. I held the invitation like it might explode. Not because I was angry. Honestly, it was mostly confusion. Like, why now? We hadn't spoken in over a year. He didn't text, didn't call, didn't even like my birthday post where I put a picture of me holding a balloon and a plate of ribs. But now I was invited to witness him pledge eternal love. Curious. I almost didn't go. Almost. But I had a rule. Never turn down free cake unless someone spits on it. The wedding was outdoors, at one of those trendy barn venues with string lights and mason jars and rustic vibes that say, we totally didn't spend $30,000 to make this look casual. I showed up wearing navy suit, no tie, a pocket square that screamed, I'm doing fine, thanks, and the most subtle pair of stretchy slacks known to man. They looked like dress pants, but I knew. People turned. Not in a bad way. Just that low-key wedding whisper. Is that Ronnie? He looks different. Damn right I look different. Physically? A bit. My hair was longer, my beard was shaped, and I'd lost the stress shove from my peanut butter and existential dread phase. But it wasn't just that. It was how I walked in. I didn't scan the room hoping someone would wave me over. I didn't wonder who still didn't like me. I walked in like a man who had cooked his own salmon, successfully, thank you very much, led client meetings, and had a backup career in making strangers laugh about imaginary sandwich arguments. I was Ronnie 2.0, in soft pants and full control. Guess where they sat me? With all of them. Jared, Sam, Rachel, even Greg, who once ghosted me mid-text convo to go join the new group chat. As I sat down, there was this split second of frozen smiles, like a sitcom reunion where everyone knows the last season was messy. Ronnie, Jared said, "Man, so glad you came." Couldn't miss it, I said, with a calmness that tasted better than the champagne. Small talk started. Stilted. Surface level. They asked about the business stuff. Someone mentioned they'd seen my reel, which made me feel like I was auditioning for The Bachelor. Then Sam leaned over and said, "You look really happy." It wasn't a compliment. It was confusion. Like they couldn't figure out how I thrived after they let me drown. And then, because the universe has a twisted sense of humor, someone handed me the mic for a toast. I wasn't supposed to give one. I wasn't in the wedding party. I wasn't even in the top 5 of Jared's friend list anymore. But Kayla, his now wife, knew me from the before times. Back when Jared and I were inseparable, and I once drove him to the ER after he got too experimental with hot sauce. She hugged me earlier and whispered, "Say something funny. You always made him laugh." So there I was, standing, holding a mic, facing a room full of people who either used to love me or still weren't sure if they were allowed to anymore. I looked at Jared. He looked nervous. I took a breath and said, I used to live with Jared, and I'll tell you, marriage is going to be way easier for Kayla than that was. For one, she doesn't leave dishes in the sink for 3 days while calling it soaking. Laughter. I relaxed. We've all changed since those days. Some of us grew facial hair. Some of us grew up. And some of us grew silent for a while. You could feel the shift in the air. I wasn't being petty. I wasn't calling anyone out. I was just telling the truth. With a wink. But here's the thing about real friends. Even if you take a break, even if things get weird, you can still show up. When it matters. I raise my glass. So here's to showing up. For each other. For yourself. And for cake. Big laugh. I sat down. My heart was thumping like I just did karaoke shirtless. And then Jared reached across the table and said, quietly, I wasn't a good friend, man. I didn't know how to deal with you changing. But you look good. You are good. And in that moment, I didn't feel angry or vindicated or triumphant. I felt free. That's the thing about moving on. You don't need revenge. You just need peace. And maybe a mic and a captive wedding audience, if you're lucky. Next time? Oh, things get even more interesting. Some of my ghost friends start asking if we can hang out sometime. One even pitches a business idea, and I have to decide, do I let them back in, or do I hold my boundary like a well-sauced lasagna? It had been a few months since Jared's wedding, long enough for the buzz of group chats and sudden catch-up messages to wear off. Most of them had drifted away again after realizing I wasn't going to slide back into my old role as the group's unofficial jester. The truth is, I wasn't ignoring them out of spite. I simply didn't have the energy to perform anymore. Not for people who only clapped when I was entertaining, never when I was struggling. Instead, my days looked different now. Peaceful even. My client work had picked up, and I found myself in a steady rhythm. Mornings filled with strategy calls, afternoons writing, evenings split between improv classes and dinner experiments that occasionally didn't involve the smoke alarm. The loneliness that once crushed me had turned into something else entirely. Space. Space to breathe. Space to create. Space to hear myself think without needing the background noise of constant validation. Then, out of nowhere, came the podcast. It wasn't my idea. Becky from my improv crew had been nudging me for weeks. She thought my weird, twisty life story, the career climb, the ghosting, the glow-up, could actually help people. At first, I laughed it off. Who want to listen to a guy talk about being ghosted by his own friends? But she kept at it. And then one day, I thought, maybe this isn't about who listens. Maybe it's about saying it out loud. For me. So we recorded the first episode in her apartment, surrounded by a pile of throw pillows and a bowl of pretzels we never actually touched. I just told the story like it happened. No drama. No fake tears. No bashing anyone. Just honest thoughts. What it felt like to be celebrated one day and invisible the next. What it taught me about friendship and about myself. We called it Off the Guest List, a little inside joke about how I once got removed from a birthday party invite without even noticing. The episode didn't go viral, but it did start conversations. A few strangers reached out. One guy told me he'd gone through the exact same thing after getting sober. His old crew just didn't know how to handle the new version of him. Another woman said it gave her the courage to say no to friends who only showed up when they needed something. I wasn't chasing clout. I was finding connection. That's when a surprise happened. I was walking out of a coffee shop one afternoon, my usual oat milk latte in hand, because apparently I'm now someone who says oat milk without flinching, and I saw her. Kayla, Jared's wife. She waved before I even recognized her. We hadn't talked since the wedding. She looked genuinely happy to see me, which caught me off guard. We chatted for a few minutes. Just surface stuff, weather, how the wedding photos turned out, small business life. Then she said something I didn't expect. Apparently, Jared had been listening to the podcast. Quietly, on his own. He hadn't said anything to me directly, but he told Kayla it made him think about how people grow at different speeds and how sometimes we ghost others not because they did anything wrong, but because we feel left behind. I nodded, unsure what to say. I wasn't angry anymore. I just didn't know what he wanted me to do with that information. She smiled, said she thought he might reach out at some point, and then added something else before walking away. You seem lighter now. Like you're finally standing in your own story. That stuck with me. She was right. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't running after anyone's approval. I wasn't chasing the next laugh or the next invite or the next way to prove I belonged. I was just me, and that was enough. The real turning point came later that week. I got a message, this time from a different old friend. Someone I hadn't even realized was part of the quiet ghosting. He apologized, said he didn't know how to reach out before, but had been following my work and thought it was cool what I was building. He asked if we could grab lunch sometime. And for the first time, I didn't say yes. But I didn't say no either. Instead, I told him the truth, that I didn't hold any resentment, but I was in a different season of life now. I wished him well, but I wasn't sure lunch would make sense anymore. It wasn't cold. It wasn't bitter. It was just clear. That's the thing about boundaries. Once you learn to draw them, you don't do it to push people away. You do it to make space for the right ones to step in and to honor the version of yourself that fought hard to get here. I wasn't looking back anymore. I was moving forward. Let me start by saying this. There is no greater test of your emotional growth than sitting through a family dinner with your aunt who thinks therapy is just complaining with snacks, and your cousin who still brings up the time you cried during Finding Nemo. I was at one of those dinners. The kind where the food is amazing, but the conversation makes you question your ancestry. It was Sunday. Classic comfort food lineup. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, a suspiciously wet salad, and my Uncle Mark talking about cryptocurrency like he invented it personally. The whole extended family had gathered because someone's dog had turned 10, and apparently that's now a reason to host a potluck. I showed up a little late, wearing my I'm relaxed but still thriving outfit. Dark jeans, soft sweater, that one cologne that smells like I have a skincare routine and maybe a second income. Everyone greeted me with the usual chorus of, well, look who decided to show up, and is that a new haircut or just your face doing something different? Gotta love family. But here's the twist. This dinner wasn't just about overcooked green beans and unsolicited life advice. It became a mini reunion of sorts. Because who else walked in right as I was scooping mashed potatoes? Greg. Yeah, Greg from the old group chat Greg. Apparently, he's dating my cousin now. I didn't know whether to be surprised or mildly concerned for her well-being. He saw me, gave me one of those casual guy nods that means I acknowledge your existence, but we're pretending nothing happened, and said, hey, Ronnie. I smiled and said, hey, Greg, like we hadn't silently drifted apart over a span of 12 unanswered texts and a group chat exodus. And you know what? I was fine. Truly. No racing heart. No anger. Not even a twinge of I should have worn something cooler just in case. Just me, holding a plate of chicken and grace. We didn't talk much during the meal. He sat on the other end of the table, probably thankful there was at least one aunt between us acting as a buffer and human napkin dispenser. But then dessert happened, because nothing stirs old feelings like pie. We were both standing near the kitchen, reaching for the same slice of apple pie. Because of course we were. Greg looked at me and gave this half laugh, like he'd been meaning to say something, but wasn't sure if now was the time. Spoiler, it wasn't. But that never stops anyone. He goes, hey man, I heard your podcast. I paused mid-slice, not expecting that. Oh yeah, I said, try not to look like someone whose vulnerable monologue had been broadcast directly into the ears of someone who once told me I was too much sometimes. Yeah, he nodded. It's cool. Like real honest. You've always been good at talking about stuff. I guess I just didn't get it back then. I didn't respond right away, mostly because I was chewing. Also because I wasn't sure what kind of thank you was appropriate when someone compliments you for surviving the friendship they bailed on. He kept going. I mean, we were all kind of immature. You were changing, and I think we just didn't know how to handle it. There was again that same theme. People not ghosting because they hated me, but because they didn't recognize me anymore. Or worse, they saw something in me they weren't ready to see in themselves. I gave him a polite nod and said, yeah, growth's weird like that. Then I did something I was genuinely proud of. I turned and walked back to the table. Pie in hand. Dignity intact. No dramatic speeches. No, you hurt me monologue. Just a quiet decision to not reopen doors I had already gently closed. That night, after everyone left and the dishwasher was humming in the background like a tired robot, my mom asked how I was doing. Not in that casual, fake-interested way. In the real, I know something's going on with you way. I told her the truth. That I was good. Like, really good. That life was simpler now. Quieter. And that for the first time, I wasn't constantly trying to be funny or liked or included. I also told her something I hadn't said out loud before. I used to think being left out was the worst thing. But now I know being included for the wrong reasons feels worse. She gave me that mom look, the one that says, you're finally becoming the adult I hoped you'd be, but you're still not taking home any Tupperware. So here's what part 6 taught me. Life doesn't give you one big dramatic scene where you get to tell everyone off and walk away in slow motion. Sometimes your closure comes in the form of a brief chat next to a pie, a polite nod, and choosing not to rekindle what once drained you. The more I said no to old roles, to awkward invitations, to half-hearted apologies, the more I made room for real connection. For new friends who knew me now, not just who I used to be when I was the entertainment. And let me tell you, that slice of pie, it tasted like freedom. It started with a buzz. My phone lit up one evening while I was working on a brand strategy for a coffee startup that wanted to be the Netflix of caffeine. Don't ask, I still don't know what that means. Anyway, the name on the screen? Sam. Yep, that's Sam. The same guy who used to finish my jokes, steal my fries, and once bailed on me at a Halloween party because Ronnie's being too deep tonight. The message wasn't long. Just one of those vague, open-ended texts that could mean everything or absolutely nothing. Hey man, you around this weekend? Wanted to talk. It's funny how short sentences like that can pull you back into old versions of yourself. For a split second, I felt that familiar tug, the one that says, maybe this is the moment. Maybe he finally gets it. But I've learned something important over the last year. You don't owe anyone your peace just because they suddenly remember your number. Still, I didn't want to be cold. Growth doesn't mean you become a robot. It just means you don't walk back into fires you already put out. So I replied the next morning, politely. Said I hope he was doing well, but my weekend was full, and I was in a season where I was keeping things simple. No explanation. No emotional Yelp review. Just a boundary wrapped in kindness. He never responded, and that told me everything I needed to know. What's wild is that while all these old connections were slowly trying to creep back in, new ones were forming without effort. It started at the podcast meetup. A small group of listeners asked if I'd be willing to host a live Q&A. Nothing fancy, just coffee, couches, and real talk. I agreed, mostly because someone offered free pastries and I am, at my core, still a man of simple motivators. What I didn't expect was how normal it felt. No pretense, no weird energy. Just a bunch of people sharing stories about growing apart from old friends, navigating lonely seasons, and realizing that sometimes being alone is just the first step to building the right community. There was this one guy, Marcus, former college athlete, big smile, loud laugh, and a story almost identical to mine. Said he lost his whole circle when he got serious about mental health. Apparently, choosing therapy over Thursday night tequila wasn't popular in his friend group. Go figure. Then there was Lena, a small business owner who used to be the fixer in her friend group. The one who always planned everything, listened to everyone's drama, and somehow got blamed whenever anything went wrong. She said something that stuck with me. When I stopped over-explaining myself, I realized who actually respected me. Not many. And just like that, without trying, I had people. New people. Good people. People who didn't need me to be the funny one, or the planner, or the guy who always says yes. They just liked me. Regular, low-maintenance, stretchy pants wearing me. One night, I was scrolling through old messages. You know, that quiet moment when your brain says, hey, remember that emotional minefield? Let's go jogging through it. I saw messages I'd sent months ago. Long ones, honest ones. Little check-ins. Apologies I never got replies to. Memes that were never acknowledged. My side of conversations that slowly went extinct. I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't even feel sad. I just felt removed, like I was reading someone else's history. It was the strangest form of healing, realizing I didn't need to delete anything, because those texts weren't evidence of who I'd lost. They were proof of how hard I tried, and how far I'd come. Here's the thing they don't tell you in school, or sitcoms, or motivational Instagram quotes. Not everyone will like you, especially when you change. When I started showing up as my real self, quieter, more honest, less eager to entertain, some people didn't vibe with that, and it used to wreck me. But now, I kind of like it, because every time someone walks away from the real you, it makes more space for someone who actually sees you. Turns out, being liked by everyone is exhausting. Being liked by the right ones? That's peace. So yeah, part 7? This is where I realized I didn't miss the old group chat. Not really. What I missed was feeling understood. And now that I had that, even from a handful of new people, even just from myself, I didn't need to chase it anymore. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't lonely. I was full. And not just from pastries this time. It started with a toaster. A very fancy toaster, actually. One of those sleek, matte black things with a touchscreen and more settings than Spaceship. I'd ordered it as a reward to myself after landing a big client. A boutique kombucha brand that wanted their identity to feel mysterious but fizzy. Whatever that means. Anyway, I unpacked the toaster, stared at it, and thought, I should throw a party. Not the usual kind. No beer pong. No loud music. No Greg yelling shots. every 11 minutes like it was his life's mission. This was going to be different. I wanted a party that actually felt like me now. Cozy, funny, maybe a little weird. So I created an invite that read, Ronnie's first annual toast, and roast come eat toast. Roast each other lightly. Laugh until your soul unclenches. BYOB, bring your own butter. I sent it to a small list, mostly my improv crew, a few new friends from the podcast meetup, and one wild card, my 63-year-old neighbor, Carol, who once yelled at me for parking too close to her recycling bin, but later apologized with banana bread. Here's where things got interesting. The night of the party, I was setting out toppings, everything from almond butter to fig jam because I'm classy now, when my phone buzzed. 3 missed calls. From Jared. I stared at the screen like it was a ghost trying to FaceTime me. Then a text. Hey, heard about your party from Sam. I know I'm not invited, but I'm downstairs. I froze, and then came the knock. Let me pause here to say, I did not plan on turning my toast party into a surprise therapy session, but apparently life had other plans. I opened the door, and there he was, Jared, in a hoodie and sneakers, holding a six-pack and a weird expression that screamed, I don't know why I'm here, but I could not come. Behind him, Sam and Greg. They looked like 3 men who had wandered into a movie halfway through and weren't sure whether they were the heroes or the villains. Now, I could have told them to leave. I could have done the dramatic thing, closed the door, turned up the music, and raised a toast to moving on. But instead, I just said, there's fig jam in the kitchen. Shoes off. They stepped in. Awkward? Absolutely. But also kind of electric, like something unpredictable was about to unfold. My new friends noticed right away. You could feel the shift in the air. Carol, yes, she came, whispered to Becky, those aren't toast people. Those are drama people. And Carol was not wrong. Now here's where it gets weird. The whole concept of the party was that everyone had to give a mini roast. Not mean, just funny. Something about themselves or each other. It kept things light and real. Reggie got up first and roasted himself for accidentally texting, love you, to his landlord. Lena followed with a joke about her addiction to planner apps. The mood was warm, golden, buttery, literally and emotionally. Then Jared stood up. He raised his glass and said, I like to roast myself for ghosting one of the best people I've ever known. Silence. I wanted to crawl under the coffee table. But he kept going. I think a part of me didn't know how to handle your growth. You got clear on who you were, and I didn't like what that said about me. Sam nodded. Greg looked like he wanted to disappear into the sourdough. It wasn't funny. It was raw. And for a moment, I was mad. Like, how dare you turn my cute little jam-in toast gathering into an emotional TED Talk? But then I realized something. This wasn't about me needing an apology. This was about them finally seeing me for who I am and realizing I'm not waiting on their validation anymore. The rest of the night was surprisingly great. Carol brought out a bottle of wine labeled Christmas 2004 that may or may not have been legal. Sam ended up in a heated debate with Juno over whether oat milk is a scam. Greg, to his credit, cleaned up without being asked. That might be the most shocking part of the night, honestly. At the end, people lingered. Nobody rushed out. No fake excuses. No boasting. Just laughter. Crumbs. Stories. And me, looking around the room, thinking, this is what it was supposed to feel like all along. So yeah, I threw a party to celebrate toast and ended up watching my past, present, and future awkwardly shuffle into my living room and finally get along. And guess what? I kept the toaster box. Not because I plan on returning it, but because every time I look at it, I remember the night I finally felt like the main character of my own life. Not the comic relief. Not the plus one. Just Ronnie. At peace. With jam. You ever have one of those weeks where life's just normal? Not bad. Not amazing. Just coasting along like a playlist of chill songs and decent weather. That's where I was. Post-host party, work flowing, improv nights, still golden. My life had hit this groove I hadn't felt in, well, ever. And then an email showed up that looked fake. The subject line said, possible feature, from ghosted to growth? At first, I thought it was spam. Like someone was going to offer me fame, fortune, and a personalized robe in exchange for my social security number. But it wasn't spam. It was real. From an actual media platform, a decently big one, that had stumbled across my podcast and wanted to do a profile. Not just a shout-out. A full piece. Story. Photos. The works. Apparently, one of their producers had been in the audience at the live meetup. She said she couldn't stop thinking about my phrase, you don't need closure from people who never valued your voice in the first place. Now, if you think I kept that cool, please know I spent the next 10 minutes whispering, "What is happening?" into a spoonful of yogurt. We set up a Zoom call. I wore a shirt with buttons. I brushed my hair. I even made sure there were no visible toast crumbs in the shot. The producer, her name was Mel, told me they wanted to run a story about modern friendship breakups, about how more and more people were choosing solitude and authenticity over people-pleasing and keeping the peace. She said my story hit a nerve, that I had the tone, funny, honest, not too inspirational quote on a sunset background. And then she dropped the kicker. We're considering a short video feature, kind of like a mini documentary. You be the focus. Interviews, B-roll, maybe even scenes from that party you threw. My brain panicked, because suddenly, this wasn't just a personal glow-up. This was public. My story, all the awkwardness, the ghosting, the quiet glow-up, going out into the world like a balloon with my name on it. And I didn't know if I wanted to let go of the string. I told Mel I'd think about it. Then I did what every emotionally developing adult does when faced with a life decision. I made a pros and cons list and ate a lot of cheese. Pros. Asterisk massive reach equals help more people feel seen. Asterisk could boost my consulting business. Asterisk I get to wear a nice jacket and be filmed in moody lighting. Cons. Asterisk my old friends would definitely see it. Asterisk I'd have to relive some very uncomfortable moments. Asterisk I might cry on camera. Not that there's shame in that. I just prefer to leak privately. I walked around with the decision for days. I'd pick up my phone to message Mel yes, then delete it. I try saying no, and feel this weird regret in my ribs. Then, just to throw a wrench into my overthinking spiral, guess who reached out again? Rachel. She DM'd me after seeing a teaser post from the media platform's Instagram. They had soft-launched the idea. Apparently, that's a thing now. Her message? Wow, guess you're really doing it. I always knew you were good at telling stories. That should have felt like support. But it didn't. It felt like someone watching you through a window and pretending they helped build the house. The universe, apparently, wasn't done stirring the pot. 3 days before my final decision was due, I ran in my high school drama teacher. I hadn't seen her in years. We were both waiting for the same food truck, one that sells $12 grilled cheese sandwiches that somehow feel worth it. She looked at me and said, "Ronnie, is that you? You used to hide behind props in class." We laughed, chatted. Then she said something I didn't expect. "You always had something to say. I just wasn't sure you'd ever want the whole room to hear it." Boom. There it was. The reason I'd been hesitating. Not because I didn't want to tell my story, but because some part of me was still stuck in that old belief that I had to shrink myself so people would stay comfortable. So I made my decision. Emailed Mel. I said yes, and I meant it. Not because I needed the attention, but because for the first time in my life, I wasn't sharing my story to prove something. I was sharing it to free something. So the video came out. It was simple, about 10 minutes long, beautifully shot. Dramatic music, soft lighting, a shot of me staring pensively at a toaster. Still don't know how I feel about that one. They titled it, "When Your Friends Disappear, and You Don't." Within a few hours, it had a few thousand views. By the end of the week, over 100,000. Apparently, there are a lot of people who've been ghosted by their entire friend group, eaten peanut butter in a beanie, and come out the other side. Who knew? The comments were wild. Some kind, some brutally honest. One guy just said, "This man looks like a cinnamon roll who's been through it," which I think was a compliment. But that wasn't the craziest part. The craziest part was who messaged me after. The first one to slide in. You guessed it, Greg. He messaged me like nothing had happened. Like we've been bros this whole time. Like he hadn't once ghosted me in real time while I was mid-sentence. "Yo man, just saw the video. You crushed it. Super proud. Let's collab sometime." I didn't even know what collab meant in his context. Like, were we starting a band? Designing mugs? The old me would have wanted to say something snappy. Maybe point out the irony of being called inspiring by someone who once told me I was too intense about hummus. But instead, I just said, "Thanks, man. Glad it connected." And left it there. Because I wasn't here to relive history. I was here to write a better one. Now, I knew not everyone would be thrilled about the video. But I didn't expect Rachel to call me out on her Instagram story. Oh yes, she didn't name me directly. But it was one of those vague, passive-aggressive posts that screamed, "I'm subtweeting someone who knows I'm talking about them." It said, "Some people out here turning personal stuff into content for clout. Healing doesn't have to be a performance." I stared at it for a full minute, then put my phone down and went for a walk. Because the truth is, she wasn't entirely wrong. Telling my story was public. It was on camera. and it was going out to strangers on the internet. But what she missed, it wasn't a performance. It was a release. And if my healing looked like content to her, that was fine. It wasn't for her anyway. Among the flood of DMs, there was one that knocked the wind out of me. It was from someone I didn't know, a high school senior from Wisconsin. Her message said, "I thought I was broken because I didn't have a friend group anymore. But your story made me feel okay for the first time in months. Like maybe this isn't the end of the world, just the start of my own." I sat with that for a while. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Your story isn't for everyone, but for someone, it might be everything. A few days after the video dropped, I hosted another toast party. No big announcements. No cameras. Just the same crew, Becky, Juno, Reggie, Carol, who brought wine again and wore a feather boa this time because why not? We laughed, roasted each other gently, ate entirely too much sourdough. And for the first time in my life, I didn't wonder who wasn't there. I didn't scan the room hoping someone from the past might show up and apologize with a look. Because I finally understood something that took a year of silence, growth, jam, and stretch pants to learn. Closure isn't a conversation. It's a decision. And I made mine. So if you're listening to this and your phone's gone quiet, if the group chat doesn't ding anymore, if you're staring at your own toaster wondering who you are without the audience, let me tell you, you're not broken. You're just becoming someone new. And someday soon, you'll be raising a glass of orange juice in your own kitchen, laughing with people who actually get it. Not because they knew the old you, but because they see the real you now.